change the whole thing,
This is the time, and we hope stuff's coming because it's going to be January and Rumble and Road to WrestleMania. We hope things get shaken up. But I hope they really lean into something intense. And again, the obvious choice is to push Becky Lynch to the moon. And it's really hard to do that when there is a brand split. The obvious solution is to switch her to Raw as quickly as possible. But yeah, just having Becky Lynch on both shows and pushing her to the moon and having her attack men and women and going for it. Just going for something instead of having everything be so self-contained and kind of safe and its own little the feuds are sort of locked together. I don't know. I do think that things need to be shaken up. They, once again, of course, suffered huge, I guess, bad ratings, under 2 million people, and it doesn't look good. And when the thing is that all ships also lower with the tide, so when WWE does poorly, then it makes other companies scared to invest in wrestling, and, All Elite's trying to start up, and what does it mean for them if wrestling is considered not a draw on TV, and what does it mean for the Fox deal ultimately? Nothing's going to happen, but they got to get numbers up, which is a good time to bring up some of the big news from the year. Becky Lynch.
Yeah.
Who I think a lot of us, not just you and I, but other outlets and people online would just sort of unanimously agree was the standout superstar of the year. And I don't even think we need to break it into male and female categories. Just superstar of the year, Becky Lynch. And a few people wrote in some emails about their favorite moments of the year. One of my favorite ones, just because of its brevity, came from Bo, who wrote in. Bo's like, I ain't playing the game where I tell you where I'm from. It's just Bo. Wrote in, best wrestling moment of 2018. Becky Lynch invades Raw. That's all Bo wrote. It felt like a tweet, honestly. It felt like something Bo could have tweeted me, but chose to email us. Becky Lynch invades Raw. And it was such I still don't feel like, and obviously they couldn't capitalize on it like maybe they wanted to because of her concussion and her broken face, but it still feels like something they haven't fully latched onto the way they could have. Given that moment, given how much it unified wrestling fans in this is a memorable moment, goosebumps moment with amazing visuals. You think of Steve Austin's face bloody in his match with Bret Hart, screaming. You think of a lot of iconic imagery from the past, and Becky Lynch with her broken nose, standing in that aisle looking down at the ring is seared into our psyche. It is a huge, important moment and a sort of a culmination of everything she was trying to say up until that point, which a lot of fans are still you'll see a lot of people still confused about this man moniker.
Yeah.
But that's what it was. That was the tip of the mountain when she was talking. What she was talking about was that.
Yeah, it was an awesome moment. It got murky only because of the unfortunate situation of the real life injury, even though, of course, the real life injury led to her being all bloody, which added to the added to the epicness of it. So, because if she hadn't been really hurt, she wouldn't be all bloody and she wouldn't have looked as badass standing sort of tall, covered in blood. I think we wish we could have gotten the broken nose, but maybe not the concussion. Sure.
Just something to give her the look, but not like the actual full consequences of the punch.
Right. But it was a great culmination, and her sort of whole breakout has been an awesome thing to see. And again, it's kind of the interesting road of wrestling. You look at the Four Horsewomen. I always remember the first time Becky Lynch was the last of the Four Horsewomen to really be on my radar. I was just getting into NXT. I loved Sasha. I started to kind of learn more about Bayley and Charlotte, and then I watched that Fatal 4-Way for the title, the one that Sasha ended up winning. After Paige had to vacate the title because she had moved over to the main roster.
Yeah.
And Becky was the only person I didn't really know at that point. She was like this, I don't think she was as strongly defined as a character. And so all I knew was she was great. All four of them was that was one of those early NXT matches for me that made a huge impression and made a huge impression on what was happening with the women's division in NXT that was not happening in WWE at the time. But then, it was interesting coming into the main roster because even though she was the first SmackDown champ, it just did seem like she was sort of this also ran. And even though we've bemoaned many times the mishandling of Bailey and Sasha, which of course is still a huge thing they have to deal with. It still felt like Becky never even got like the push that they were getting at different points. And Charlotte certainly had risen to the top, well deserved. So it was kind of really cool to see after Becky had kind of just been around for a year and a half, not doing much of anything after she was champ. This year for her to just burst out in the way she did. And because it was a natural thing, we talk about how WWE often sort of shoots themselves in the foot where they have predetermined, and Roman Reigns is obviously the most infamous example of like, this will be your new favorite wrestler, this will be your favorite person. And how that's always going to get a lot of hostility, sometimes, over the top hostility from people who are like, don't tell me what to like. So the Becky thing was great because it was so natural, and it did feel like one of those situations where this wasn't the plan, but look what's happening here. I've mentioned before even the fact that they did course correct, because when she went like full heel, she did one promo that was like "screw you" to the crowd, but it's like no.
It's like what she was saying. The crowd wasn't with me when they were very much with her at that point,
right,
and had been for a good month or two, leading into that. Like, they fully cited, like, there was a reason everyone cheered when she attacked Charlotte after the match at SummerSlam.
Yes.
And a lot of people were writing about how Becky's in the right here. Like, she has every right to attack Charlotte. It's one of those things where it's awesome that what we're hearing about what could possibly be headed for WrestleMania is also what we want. Mm-hmm. Like, as you were saying, like, you hear at this point, like, Roman Reigns is supposed to be the main event, and obviously he can at this point, and the situation could be very different if he hadn't left. But the fact that it could be either Ronda versus Rousey, Becky versus Ronda at WrestleMania in possibly the final match on the card spot, like, that's something that everyone's really excited about. And it could even also be this triple threat that people are talking about. Though the rumor is right now that Ronda might face Charlotte at the Rumble separately. Right. I don't know.
And I'm guessing you saw the weird back and forth that happened with Asuka and Becky.
Yeah, that was weird. Like, where it was announced, and then Paige had to tweet that it was taken back. Even though it was like in storyline supposed to be her final decision as GM of SmackDown.
Yeah.
was booking Asuka versus Becky, but yeah. So we'll see what happens with that. We'll see who she actually winds up facing, who Asuka's going to face, I guess, because I think we're predicting Becky to win that Rumble. It's possible she won't. It's
and it's also possible
it could be another Ronda screws her out of a thing.
Yeah, but also of course, people who are in the Rumble doesn't stop them from having other matches that night, and they still could do Asuka Becky. Asuka retains, and then Becky still is in the Rumble and wins. There's a lot of possibilities.
Or Charlotte can win the Rumble, and then she just wants to challenge Asuka. I don't know. But that's the thing. It's like you've got Charlotte and Becky on a different brand still really wanting to feud with Ronda Rousey. And, so we'll see. So that was a huge part of, I guess, the second half of 2018. We can also talk about right now Roman Reigns, his very shocking announcement that his cancer had returned, and he vacated the Universal Championship. That this title just, will never catch a break, probably. And I don't know what any updates on his situation so far. I think he was at Tribute to the Troops. I didn't catch that show last week.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know what his prognosis is or any updates on his health. Obviously he's going to be out as long as it takes for him to be out. That's not like a situation where we're like, oh, he's given a 6-month timetable or something. And he's just, he's out until we hear he's ready to come back. And we hope he's ready to come back at any point. I think when this happened, we were trying to talk about the seriousness of this and how it's one thing to just sort of say, yeah, Roman, go kick cancer's ass. And, good vibes are certainly important, but you also have to hold within yourself the seriousness of this.
Yeah.
This is a serious thing. And I think it's serious, so serious that it has to sort of go beyond us. Because it's easy. People leave so many, usually for injury, obviously. People go off our TV all the time and we just expect them because they're not part of our lives. They're part of our TV watching experience. We just assume they'll return. This is a situation where it was really a heavy announcement because he was going off to do something way more serious than just get surgery and rehab an injury.
Yeah, yeah. But it also, it you know, and then, you know, because there's that entire part of it, which is just like, this man is, you know, very sick, and you wish him well. And I'm glad to see a lot of people could, you know, I think almost everyone was able to sort of put aside anything they think about Roman Reigns, the character, or how he's been pushed, be like, hey, we just want this guy to be better and, you know, be able to come back. And then there's the, you know, what it meant for WWE and Raw as a brand, because he had been their top guy. And it kind of exposed, again, sort of issues that they have right now, which is he was their top guy. He was also a very controversial top guy because, you know, he was, so many people disliked the character or disliked how they've booked him. And they haven't been able to solve that yet. And then a lot of it was just out of their hands, because then their go-to second person was Braun Strowman. And guess what? He then had an injury right afterwards. So it was a very weird way for WWE, for Raw specifically, I think, to end the year. You know, Seth kind of got elevated because of that, but then he was in a storyline that was mishandled with Dean, unfortunately. So, you know, all you can only hope in situations like that, as far as, you know, the creative and what they're looking at is, you know, can they look at the big picture, and can they, you know, they're doing all these call-ups. We have our concerns about, will these people be used right? But, you know, is there someone there who can really break out in the way that Becky's breaking out? You know, can they find the person that will be that, you know, Rock or Stone Cold that is not cultivated? You know, that's always been Roman's issue to overcome, is, you know, the feeling of, like, you know, the overly cultivated feeling that, you know, WWE has preordained him to be the number one guy. And that's so hard to ask for it to not be. To be like,
but that's what they
just
that's
want to
the,
get
like,
it first up.
I mean, that's the thing. It's like, if only WWE, like, you know what they need? A lightning in a bottle. It's like, that's the thing. It's like,
Yes,
the one thing you can't make.
Right.
It's like,
right.
but that's the thing. That's what they have with Becky.
They have it with Becky. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Let's see. I say
Roman
leaving created an interesting predicament for Raw too, because of the way he was the centerpiece of that show, and Seth, who has been underutilized, you know, arguably also the most popular superstar on Raw for the entire year, who was always just he's never allowed to challenge for the Universal Championship at all, and now it's on Brock Lesnar and it's gone, is just forever the Intercontinental Champion, and he should have been the guy to face Brock Lesnar at SummerSlam. It should have been a lot of things, but it was what it was. Now they have this big hero deficit, and the biggest hero is locked up in this storyline with Clean Dean Ambrose of the League of Shadows, and they don't really have a driving force except for the McMahons on the show now to, you know, puppet everything, and with their Machiavellian ways. Like, and they're not heel and they're not babyface, and they're somewhere in between, but all we know is that they're all powerful, and that everyone has to be respectful and humble themselves before them, no matter which superstar it is, and that's really frustrating.
Yeah. Again, you know, they're promising a lot, you know, with this whole, like, we're going to shake things up, and a lot of promos for, you know, things happening. And obviously we can't really judge anything on these holiday episodes, which were literally filmed the same nights as the show ones, you know, but I am curious to see, especially as we go into Royal Rumble, which is, and again, as we've said, it's always going to be like kind of like this big reset comes every time this year anyway, as they aim towards WrestleMania and things get ramped up. But if, you know, what will be the bigger picture? Will we see more of these guys who weren't getting, you know, any big matches get, you know, again, like Sanity, you know, had a match on, you know, SmackDown after the running in on the one before, but, you know, we'll see what happens.
I mean, there are reports now that Almas is not happy at all with his spot on the main roster. And
oh, really?
Which is one of those things. It's like, I don't know what he expects. I mean, he's getting a lot of airtime. He's on TV. He's getting main event matches. Does he consider championships success? I don't know personally what he thinks. I feel like he's doing fine. I feel like he isn't in a clear feud with anyone. He's sort of a fill-in guy or a partner, and he's a main villain. Yeah. But he also always loses at this point. Like, he lost to Mustafa Ali, and he wants more, and reports are that WWE was trying to woo another famous luchador into its ranks, and this person